Hello, and welcome to Dark Academia Queen. Today we're going to be talking about something that ties very heavily into Dark Academia, I believe. But if you're new here, hit that like button, ring the bell for notification, subscribe, help a girl out. Come on now. But anyway, we're going to be talking about classicism. Now, what exactly is classicism? Well, this is in the arts generally referred to as high regard of the classical period, classical antiquity, and to Western tradition, as a setting standard for the taste which the classicists seek to emulate. In its purest form, it is an aesthetic attitude dependent on the principles based on culture, art, literature in ancient Greece and Rome, with the emphasis on form, simplicity, proportion, clarity, and structure. Perfection, restrained emotion, as well as explicit appeal to the intellect. Now, the art of classicism typically seeks to be formal or restrained. Now, there is a violent emphasis of the sudden acceleration of the Romantic movement, which has been destroyed those qualities of balance and completeness throughout, which is retained as until the present century of this position, and the authority is restricted to its individuals. Now, as noted, classicism implies a canon of widely accepted ideal forms, whether it's in the Western canon that is examining in the nude from 1956, but it's also a force that is often in post medieval European and European traditions. However, some periods felt themselves more connected with the classical ideas than others, particularly in the Age of Enlightenment, when neoclassicism was an important movement of the visual arts. So, this is a specific genre of philosophy that expresses itself in literature, architect, art, and music, and which has ancient Greek and Roman sources and emphasis on society, and it is particularly expressed in neoclassicism of the Age of Enlightenment, and has also a recurrent tendency in the late antique period that has more of a major reveal in Coriolanus of the Audian art. There is also another more durable revival of the Italian Renaissance, which is to follow the Byzantine rising trade of the Islamic cultures during a flood of sought out thoughts in the antiquities until the time the identification which the antiquities have been a contentious history of Christendom from the conversation of the Roman Emperor Constantine I. Now, Renaissance classicism introduced a host of elements into European culture, including, but not limited to, the application of mathematics, um, mathematics and empirical into art, humanism, literary and depictive realism, and formalism. Importantly, it is introduced as polytheism or paganism, or the juxtaposition of the ancient and modern as well. Now, the classicism of the Renaissance led to and gave way to a difficult sense of the classical in the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries. In this period, classicism took more overly structural overtones in orderliness, predictability, and the use of geometry and grids, and the importance of rigorous discipline and pedantry, as well as the formation in the schools, in the arts and music. In the court of Louis XV, no wait, 16th, was seen as a center of um, classicism, and its reference to the gods of Olympus as the symbolic product of absolutism. Its adherence to the axiomatic deductive reasoning, and its love of the order and predictability. So, with that being said, This period saw a revival of the classical art forms, including Greek drama, music, opera, and its modern European forms, and it had roots in attempts to recreate the combination in singing of theater thought to be of a Greek norm. Examples of this appeal in classicism include Dante, Petrarch, Shakespeare, and poetry and theater. And Tudor drama, in particular, modeled itself at the classical and divided itself into a tragedy and comedy. Studying works became regarded as essential for well-rounded, especially education in the liberal arts. So, the Renaissance also explicitly um, returned to the architectural models and techniques associated with the Greek and Roman antiquity, including a golden rectangle as a key to proportions. They also began reviving plastic arts as well. They also, as a bronze casting in the sculpture and using classical naturalism as the foundation of the drawing and sculpture. Now, regarding the Age of Enlightenment, it identified itself as a vision of antiquity while contentious with the classicism in the previous century and was shaken into physics by Sir Isaac Newton in the improvements of machinery and measurement and a sense of liberation, which they saw as present in the Greek civilization, particularly in the struggles in the Persian Empire. The ornate, organic, and complexity integrated into the forms of the Baroque, where they would give way to series of movements that regarded themselves as classical and neoclassical, or would rapidly be labeled as such. For example, the painting of Louis Davis, was seen as an attempt to return to the formal balance, clarity, and manliness in the vigor of arts. So, what do we know? Well, we know in the 19th century that the classical age was the precursor of academicism, including such movements from uniformism to the sciences and creation of rigorous categories in artistic fields. Various movements of the Romantic period themselves are classical revolts against the prevailing trend, emotionalism, irregularity, for example, pre-Raphaelites. And by this point, classicism it was old enough to be a previous classical movement received revivals. For example, the Renaissance was seen as a means to combine the organic medieval and was the orderly classical in the 19th century continued to extend with classical programs in this. So most notably, the Newtonian program. And the account was the movement between the bodies in exchange for the mechanical thermal energy. Be honest with y'all, I'm not a science person. I thought I was. Then I was like, nah, that's too much science classes taken. I really wanted to be a vet at one point, so that's kind of sad. But anyway, the 20th century saw a number of changes in the arts and science, and classicism was used for both by those who rejected or saw a temporary transfiguration in the political, scientific, and social world, and by those who embraced these changes as a means to overthrow perceived weight of 19th century, which would go to both pre-20th century disciplines that would label as classical and modern movements, and art in which themselves was aligned with. In the present day philosophy, classicism is used as a term particularly in relation to Apollyon over Dionysium impulses in society and art. That is a preference to rationality, or at least rationality guided characteristics over emotionalism. How is the scene in the theater now? Well, classicism in the theater was developed in the 17th century by French playwrights from what they judge to be the rules of Greek classical theater, including the classical unities of the time, place, and century. Now, unity of the time referred to an entire action of a play to take place in a fictional 24-hour period. And it also meant that the action should unfold in a single location. It also meant that the play should be constructed around a single plot line, such as a tragic love affair or a conflict between honor and society, honor and duty. This has been seen through Shakespeare, Pierre Corneille, John Racine, and more. So, There have been many influences on the French playwrights in other nations, which is very debatable. As I said, Shakespeare and his contemporaries did not follow the classicist philosophy, in particular since they were not French, and they also wrote several decades prior to this establishment. And those of Shakespeare's plays can be seen and displayed in unity, such as The Tempest, probably indicate a familiarity with actual models of classical antiquity. What about in literature now? Well, in literary classicism drew inspiration from the qualities of portion of major works of ancient Greeks and Latin literature. In the 17th and 18th century, significant classical writers include Pierre Corneille, John Racine, John Dryden, William Rashleigh, William Congreve, Jonathan Swift, Joseph Addison, Alexander Pope, Voltaire, and many more. What about in architecture? Well, it developed during the Italian Renaissance, notably in the writings and designs of Leon Battista Alberti, or of in the works of Filippo Shelley. In the fine arts, though, we can see classical arts in ancient Greece and several style. This is also seen in political philosophy as well. Um, and it dates back to ancient Greece, Western political philosophy, which is also attributed to the Greek philosopher Plato, in which we know this played a key role when the U.S. was being trying to come up with a government for the U.S. and what we wanted. But that is it for this episode. Join me next time as we talk about urban Gothic. And then we're going to go on suburban Gothic. And then we're going to talk about the Descendant movement. Yay! And then hopefully, I really want to talk about the Catacombs of Paris, so I'm hoping my friend Gabby is available so we can talk about that one together. But I'll see y'all next time. Y'all have a great day.